There it is, my house. And inside of it, there I was, lying there watching a movie for what felt like the 100th time. Now, it's never a good thing to feel down in the dumps, but that just so happens to be where this all started, in that all too familiar headspace.
My turn. Dear Santa, why didn't you come down the chimney when I was...
Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
I wasn't sure when the holidays had changed, but I sure didn't remember them like this. The Christmas of my memories is dead, and I wondered if we were the ones who killed it. Buying things has now become the ticket to happiness. Why don't I remember when that started? It's an ideology that's pushed everywhere, and I feel like it's at its worst this time of year. Like this whole season's just become one big tactic to sell things, and it seems to work too. And it's not even just big companies anymore. That mindset is everywhere, and everybody's got something to sell. Dream cars, houses, girls, watches, cameras, everything has to be a dream nowadays. And everybody's getting it younger and younger. And once they get it, they've all got that same uncanny smile. They make purchasing happiness seem so easy that I wonder if they know something I don't. And I know I shouldn't be comparing myself with anybody other than myself, but with the world at your fingertips, how could anybody not?
Just bought my dream car.
My dream car.
My dream car?
Just bought my dream car. I just got a Lambo. I just got a Ferrari. I just got a Lambo.
Well, I have just one.
Why are you so poor?
Grind harder.
I just got my 5th Lambo.
I just spent $100K. He has a supercar. Why don't you?
In this moment, I knew that I was doing all right as a person. But with the highlights of the world flooding my thoughts, I, like most anybody would, started to have my doubts, started to wonder if they were onto something. All these old films have that same cliche happy ending anyways. I know how they'll end the second I start them. So why do I keep coming back?
If you can't do what I do, just grind hard.
Just spend more and be happy.
Jaguar? Why be happy with what you have when you can spend more?
He has a supercar. Why don't
Just grind harder.
just spend more? Just grind hard. I just got a Ferrari.
What if that sea of the same smiling face was onto something? Maybe buying a dream really would be a ticket to happiness. Well, not for that price it wouldn't. Seriously, where does everybody get the money to do this? A little bit of time passed, and I started to think that maybe I just wasn't dreaming the right dream. I don't really have a dream car, so maybe happiness is an Evo, an R8, a Lambo, a Porsche. Everybody's got a different dream after all. Too bad they're all out of my price range. Maybe happiness is buying a car that somebody else dreams about. Maybe something like a beat-up homologation car would do the trick. Come to think of it, I've actually never seen one of these for sale. 1982. The 190E is introduced as a platform by Mercedes. And the next year, the 2.316 valve variant sets the Nardo speed record, and it's revealed to the world at the Frankfurt Auto Show. It was the smallest car there. And by this time, it already had a reputation for the speed record, but Mercedes had plans to take it further and originally built the car for Group B rally racing. However, the introduction of Audi's Quattro made them promptly cancel those plans.
The revolutionary Audi Quattro heralds the arrival of a new era in rallying.
But but they already had a race car built. So in 1984, the new Nürburgring opened with an inaugural race of near road spec 2.316s driven by 20 Formula One drivers, 9 of which being former world champions, 1 being the reigning champion, and the rest being up-and-coming racers. The winner of which, who was virtually unknown at the time, happened to start his F1 career just 2 months prior.
So the victor's garland went to the youngest man in Formula One racing, the 24-year-old Brazilian Ayrton Senna de Silva.
That September, production started, and to meet homologation spec, they needed to sell 5,000 of these cars, and they were all over-engineered to say the least. A high-revving dual-cam 4-cylinder made in collaboration with Cosworth, a mechanically controlled fuel injection system, a Getrag dogleg racing transmission, factory LSD, factory lap time, custom aero, bucket seats front and rear, plus a rear suspension that cost more to develop than the entirety of the E30 platform, hydraulically self-leveling to ensure the car drives and handles the exact same no matter how much it was carrying. With a race car and nowhere to enter it, Mercedes turned their sights to DTM, an up-and-coming racing league at the time. By 1986, more and more teams were driving the 2.316, and it was getting better and better with time. Years brought enhancements to the race cars, which then translated into improvements in the homologation versions. It really was a road-going car that Mercedes just took racing. And this hadn't been done before, but since it was clearly catching the enthusiasts' eyes, it later became a trend, resulting in the creation of cars like the E30 M3. No 2.316, no M3. Time and years changed the car, giving it upgraded versions, the 2.516, the Evo 1, and later the Evo 2. It was even Mercedes' introduction to working with AMG. But this, the 2.316, was where it all started. While definitely worthy of dreams, a car like this would never be in my price range. At least I don't think they're normally that price. Why is this car so cheap? It was perfect, but I knew in that moment I shouldn't buy it. It was too much of the money I barely had. Despite knowing that, though, something compelled me to not look away. What if all those smiles truly found the ticket to happiness? Why would I not want to see if it's true? Wouldn't that be worth any concessions I have to make? A car truly cool enough to dream about. And what makes it cooler is it's a project, something I can fix up to make better, and it has issues I was able to negotiate with. A poorly done respray, cracked headlights, cracked windshield, a shifter devoid of feeling, and an engine that hasn't had a tune-up for the better part of a decade. Not to mention some missing wood trim, and the fact that the radio had a CD stuck in it, which would not stop playing. Oh, it was a glorious project, alright, and in that moment, fixing it was exactly what I thought would make me happy. As I went to post about my purchase, like the rest of the smiling faces do, I froze, and I questioned whether this was really a project worth being happy about. What with the rest of the world being able to seemingly spend 6 figures at the drop of a hat. I started to wonder if it was even worth trying, if I knew I couldn't even do that. It's not like I'd even like something that nice. At least I think I wouldn't, but in the age of the internet, it really is hard not to compare yourself. This season isn't what I remember it being as a kid. All those old movies I loved just seem so unrealistic, so cliche. Like they too are now just a way for someone else to sell me on something.
Just work harder.
Nobody likes a stock car. I just spent $100K.
You've got to customize.
You've got to build it.
Nobody likes a stock car.
You've got to customize it. Why be happy with what you have when you can spend more?
It seems like happiness is a subscription service nowadays. They talk about money like it has no value anymore, and who knows where they're getting it anyways. With what they're paid to say what they say, though, can you really blame them? I don't think most people would think twice. And what if, after all, they're right? Sure, I can't spend $100K right now, but maybe if I spend what I can, I'll know what they're talking about. They're smiling after they do it, so it must be enough, right? And it's not like I'm unhappy with the car, it just didn't make me as happy as everybody made it sound like it would. But maybe I just didn't spend enough. And once again, I knew I really wasn't in the position to do this. I'd already blown off a friend once to buy the car in the first place. And it's not like I feel any happier than I did before. Would this really change anything?
Why be happy with what you have?
Are you even worth my time?
I didn't know why, but I was compelled by the idea that they might be right still. At least I can make it reliable. Maybe this is how I can buy the happiness they seem to have. And to be honest, at least for a little while, it was. I awoke as though it were Christmas morning, though that wouldn't really come for a couple weeks. Still, today was the day. The day I get to start working on the homologation car. Figuring out what's wrong. I can see it so clearly now. It's all in this box. Packaged happiness. She still runs just as bad as I remember. It'll die if I don't have my foot on the throttle, and the same song burns itself into my brain. No matter though, what matters is that all of this is within my realm of control. I can fix both of those issues after all. Now this wasn't the first project car I'd had either. In fact, it was just the newest member of the club. That being said, even though the car was completely new, and I really knew nothing about it, I did have a rough idea of what this car would need for me to really begin to trust it. So I took the first step on a long journey. And as with any journey, there's no sense in starting unless you have a map of where to go. And in this car's case, I think there's quite a few paths I could really end up on. Might as well start with everything that I know that it needs. Even if some things won't be a today project. Finding things to fix on this car isn't going to be an issue, but since it's pretty uncommon, figuring out the proper ways to actually do that can be. So I figured I'd do all my learning from period-correct Haynes manuals and actual service booklets made by the maker of the car. Hopefully that'll be enough. I know I can't make this car perfect now. I can't just dump $100,000 into it, and I can't even fix all the issues at once. But I think I can make a difference with what little I can do. Get the car running well enough that I trust driving it, and maybe that'll be enough to make me content, to make me feel like this was all worth it, to make me finally understand what they're all smiling about. Too bad even though I glanced at the service booklets, I really have no idea what's wrong with this engine, or what's been done to it for that matter. Mystery wires, cracked suspension bushings, and the remnants of a pump delete. This car is a mix of quintessential over-engineering, and a previous owner thinking they could do it better. For the most part though, it does look to be all in order. Factory headers, intake, and factory vacuum lines, which is probably a pretty solid place to start. This car currently runs like it has a horrendous vacuum leak. The idle will not stop bouncing, and I've got to hold the throttle open every time I start the car, hot or cold. Plus I have to keep it held for a couple seconds if I want it to idle and not die. It seems like it's just getting way too much air. Or with the looks at this filter, maybe not enough. Performance filters only really increase airflow if they're clean. It seems my theory of a vacuum leak was pretty correct. A closer inspection of the hose coming off the valve cover revealed that it was in fact two pieces. And based on how hard all the plastics were in this engine bay, I had a hunch this wouldn't be the only one. The weirdest part about this vacuum line, however, is that there was a smaller one running inside of it. So I figured I would replace them both, only to find out that the tiny line running inside of the vacuum line is actually a coolant hose, because that's a normal location for one to be. It seems like this engine might be a little more over-engineered than I originally thought. This hard coolant line runs the entire inside length of this vacuum hose. Kinda the opposite of serviceable, if you ask me. But at least you can buy them new still, if you're willing to wait a couple months. For now though, I still wanted to drive the car. So while I waited for one to come back in stock, I figured I would re-engineer it. Just because the coolant and the vacuum line are ran together from the factory does not mean they need to stay that way. In fact, in this case, I think a little bit of re-engineering might make this car a bit more serviceable. Reconnect the coolant line and make a new vacuum line. It wasn't going to be a forever solution, but it did fix the vacuum leak. And after that spurt of re-engineering, I figured it was time to give this car a proper ignition tune-up. Distributor, cap, rotors, plugs, and coil. Should be pretty simple, and my guess is they haven't been changed in the better part of a decade. A fact which was immediately confirmed when the first 2 bolts of this process snapped. That's a good start. I didn't want to let this stop my quest for happiness, however, so I immediately started the process of extracting, followed by retapping when that didn't work. I thought to myself that this was just part of the process, a test that this car was throwing my way, and I sure wasn't about to let it win. A helicoil kit and a little bit of time saved the day, and it looks like this rotor and cap were at least worth replacing, so this was well worth it. And immediately following this, I tossed in some plugs and the coil itself. I was making more progress than I ever had in a single day on a project car before. Yet because of all the other projects I'd flooded my brain with, I still didn't feel like it was enough. The idle and starting issue didn't really change, so I figured the fuel filter must be old, and I slapped on a new one. And with how easy it is on this car, can you really blame me? Both the filter and the fuel pumps are external. No dropping the tank, no getting elbows deep in gasoline, just 2 banjo bolts and a little bit of time. This must be the progress everybody smiles about. These tiny feelings of accomplishment mounting to something greater. I just need to keep going. Despite already missing dinner, I couldn't stop myself from continuing the project. I think I see why people do this. If the wiper's not gonna work, I should just rebuild it. Who cares how long it takes? Or for that matter, how much I have to spend to get there.
See all this old grease? Awful.
Fixing these issues was making me happy, but the problem was it didn't seem like the happiness portrayed online. It was smaller, less perfect. And the worst part is the second I fixed one issue, the happiness from doing that dwindled the second the next one arose.
Okay, how do I shut it off? Okay.
And so I found myself in a cycle, knowing that these quick fixes brought me some step closer to the happiness I sought, and all I had to do was pay for them, was like an addiction. One I knew I couldn't really afford, but also one that I couldn't stop myself from continuing. No matter what, I had to sacrifice. Time passed, I rearranged my schedule a bit, and I spent even more money. I just had to get this car running to the point where it was in my head. A car I could dream about. A car I could rely on. And right now, all the signs of my idling issue point to the idle control valve. That's the part of the system that regulates idle and actually opens the intake flap. And if that's not working, it would make sense why throttle is needed to start the car. I just wouldn't be getting any air. And I'm already noticing vacuum leaks on the hose leading to it, so maybe I'm onto something after all. I read online that you don't just have to replace the part, and you can try and clean it first, but unfortunately that didn't quite change anything. In fact, I think it made it a little worse. It's like the car had a mind of its own, but I don't think that's anything a new valve can't fix. Well, here goes nothing. A cold start with no throttle. The idle wasn't just better, it was exactly where it was supposed to be. And it seems like it revs better too. In other words, I think that valve was well worth the money. I might end up with a car worth dreaming about after all. I figured the best way to continue this happiness was to compound on it, make more improvements to the car, which I knew I could do. I inspected the valve train and it looked fantastic for the age. And it actually looked like these valves were recently adjusted as well. So I cleaned up the valve cover and I tossed a new gasket on it. Someday I'll make this car pretty. But for now, I really do think I'd be happy with it knowing that it was a reliable driver. Then I could actually enjoy it. Then maybe I'll be as happy as the people who buy their dream cars. I figured I'd keep the momentum going by following the valve cover gasket with a shifter rebuild. This car's got one of the coolest transmissions ever, a factory dogleg manual. But the issue is it's not really in a cool condition. There's about an inch of play in every direction when you're in gear, all of which attributed to the fact that these bushings are completely dry rotted. Thankfully, they're a pretty quick swap from under the car. 3 on the gear stick side and another 3 on the transmission itself. Oh yeah, there we go. I can actually feel all 5 gears now, as opposed to kind of just guessing where I am. I don't know if I'll ever get used to first being where second is, but I guess that's part of the charm of the car. Man, a couple weeks have passed and I can't believe how far this car's already come. I can see the dream it's slowly becoming, and I think this first real drive is only going to confirm that. I still gotta fix the damn radio though. At least the car fires up without hesitation now. And this drive really was everything I wanted it to be. The car felt great. No more vacuum leaks or weird idle sapping power, crisp shifts, and it was one of the best handling cars I'd been in. It was quick, it was fun. Maybe spending this money really did make me happy. Too bad that happiness faded pretty quickly. The second I pulled over to take and post a picture of the car, in defiance of me doing that, it decided to not start. But I've already told that part of the story. I just can't understand why the issues that I know are mechanically fixed keep coming back. It's like the car has a mind of its own, or it's trying to tell me something. One minute it starts fine, and the next it's refusing. Even the radio lost power on the way home, and then the car was really running poorly, but at least the silence was kind of nice. I just wish the issue was predictable. It wasn't until I was most of the way home that the car started to behave like normal. Nothing changed mechanically, but it's like something was motivating the car, like it was trying to illustrate a point to me, that it was fine the whole time, and that it was just trying to teach me something. Whatever it was, though, at that point I was too blind to see. Back then, I was convinced that the only way forward involved spending more money to fix what I thought was the issue. Is there a happiness you can't buy? I woke up for some reason thinking about Christmas lights. I thought maybe the reason this holiday season wasn't what I remembered was because I never decorated my house. That's something that just happens when you're a kid, but the second you're an adult, it's something you have to actively do. Not sure when lights got that expensive, but maybe I can spare at least a little bit of money. Yeah, I think that'll help. Now this, on the other hand, this will definitely help. I've got a theory that the reason the car is so unpredictable and has a mind of its own is that the electronics are all screwy. Might as well make one final push before the end of the year. What's a little more spending if it means I'm happy again?
Hey, what would you think if we just did cards this year instead of big gifts?
I had a theory that the car felt like it had a mind of its own specifically because of the old head unit. Why is it even stuck playing the same song? I don't know how that would work without the front plate. So I set out to swap it. Best case, it fixes the issues the rest of the car has. Worst case, I can at least pick my own song. And from the looks of this rat's nest, maybe I wasn't too far off. Based on the wiring, it looks like this car's had 3 different stereo systems. So while I will be tossing in another one, maybe I can take this chance to clean it up a bit, after I figure out how it's all working to begin with. I matched all the colors and I plugged the new head unit in. And with the key in place, I was greeted with absolute bliss. I think I just killed the free will that this car had. Now I get to call the shots. Too bad the speakers that do work are absolutely terrible. And in looking at their wiring, I can kind of tell why. Not only are they pretty old and falling to pieces, but whoever had a system in this car before seems to have taken all the components that are worth keeping with them. There wasn't even an amplifier in the trunk. And just like the head unit, there's a complete mess of wiring. And while I don't have everything for a full system, I do have some random speakers and an old amp laying around. Not the right size, but better than not having anything. At least this way I'll be able to hear music that doesn't sound like it's completely coming from a tin can. And given that the audio was really only coming from the back of the car, I figured I'd find a similar situation in the front, only it was actually worse. There just weren't any speakers. So I put the smallest ones I had laying around in their place. Definitely not proper for the car, but I didn't buy this car for a stereo system anyways. And even though I didn't intend to, I ended up rewiring pretty much the entire system. It's had at least one aftermarket in there before, and none of the stock stuff was hooked up. So I had to run new wires anyways. But at least now, I can hear the music. And more importantly, I can choose when I don't want to. And when I do, I'm greeted with nothing but silence. I think I've finally got the car to stop trying to talk to me. Or at least I've now found a way to tune it out. This was it, the final day before Christmas. I finally silenced the car. Now I can start to make it a better place to be in. I just need one final push, and then I'll really know why they smile.
And now, a song by Olive Klein.
I finished my goal, and I started the car, to which it greeted me with silence. Not because something was broken, but because I chose for it to be silent. I had finished what I set out to do. Turn this car into a reliable driver. All that was left between me and the happiness I saw online should just be a simple test drive. Yet, in this moment, even though I am happy, I wonder if it really is that simple. I guess the only way I could really tell would be if I could see both of the options, compare the happiness of making two different choices. But that's something that only happens in those cliche and unrealistic movies. In real life, you only get to make one decision. And at this point, I'd already made mine. And so I set off to see if I too would smile like them.
From us to you, thank you for listening. Be sure to bundle up with your family by the fire. Looks like we're in for a very, very white Christmas.
I drove on, out of the city, past the plains, up a mountain pass, and down a mountain pass. Miles and miles went by, all of which spent by myself in a car which I now believed to be worthy of dreams. It was driving better than ever. It took every corner I threw at it. The transmission felt great, no overheating, no vacuum leaks, no bad idle, and because of that, I saw no reason to turn around, no reason to stop. The whole way, I too was smiling, just like the smiles I had seen. This, I thought, this was it. Tens of miles from anywhere, on Christmas Eve, pulling over, I learned from my mistakes. This car was a reliable driver, so once more, I followed in the smiling masses' footsteps. For what good is happiness if it's not posted for others? This time, I wouldn't hesitate. I wouldn't think it wasn't good enough. I wouldn't question if all that spending didn't buy me happiness. Who cares if this season still doesn't feel like what I remember? I can just spend more and continue smiling. It was only after sharing that happiness that I realized I truly was in the middle of nowhere, and I thought to myself that the snow looked like it might get worse, so I figured I'd better head back. Only to find that the car still had one final lesson to teach me, and it didn't seem like this would be one it would let me ignore. It shouldn't have been possible, not without the car having a mind of its own at least, but this was the situation I found myself in, truly in need of the help of others.
Your call has been forwarded to an automatic voice message system. Your call has been forwarded.
I called and called and called, but not a single person answered. Not a single person made the time to even pick up the phone. And at this point, could I really blame them?
Your call has been forwarded to an automatic voice message system.
Would I have picked up if I were in their shoes? I didn't know what I was going to do, and I didn't know where I was going to go, or if I would make it there to begin with. All I knew is, in this moment, I had to get away from this car. I had to at least try and make it, wherever that would be. The snow came down, and as night fell, it was shaping up to be a white Christmas. Funny, that alone is something that would have made me happy when I was a kid, back when this was all simpler. I didn't know where I was going. I could have sworn I heard music, faint at first, but as I continued on, it got louder. I had to know where it was coming from, and it was as the music reached its crescendo that I started to see things. Visions, memories, I didn't know what they were. For all I know, it could have just been what happened to the brain as you froze. But in this moment, to me, they seemed like everything.
Dear Santa, why did you come down the chimney when I was
And that is when I was given another chance. That felt too real to be a dream, but I'm not sure it was reality either. This was the first package I bought for the 190, and this was exactly where I left it. As I peered in, my heart started to leap. Nothing had really changed, and I was back where I was. There would only be one way to know for sure. I'd never been happier to hear this song again. And the even stranger part is it seems like the car was happy to play it. It fired right up, and it was running perfectly. I think I was finally starting to understand what it was trying to tell me, and I still had time to use what I learned. I don't know if anything really changed about this season to begin with. Maybe I just grew up a bit, started to notice the things I didn't before. Maybe I fell into the same trap that a lot of people seem to be in right now. But that's not happiness. Not lasting happiness, at least. Who even knows where that comes from? I don't know if this nightmare is ever gonna change, but maybe I can just learn to look past it, filter it out, and find something more pure instead. And the movies I keep coming back to every year, well, they are cliche. And I wonder if that just might be the exact reason I keep coming back to them. That's what makes them what they are.
Hunter, are you coming?